So the 1960s was the coming to fruition of decades of struggle. You had the Black Star Rising in Ghana, the Teranga Lions roaring from Senegal, and here in Nigeria, the biggest black nation on earth, also gaining its independence.
The Ford Foundation actually opened an office in 1960s in West Africa. That's why we're celebrating 65 years. What we do is work with people, institutions, with ideas that ensures that the world is a much better place for everyone to live in.
Ford Foundation touched life in those 65 years and continues to touch life.
And the things that we have supported have all intercepted with the history of the time.
And so there was a lot of expectation, a lot of worry of what this new African giant was going to do on the global stage.
There was a palpable sense of freedom. Nothing is impossible. Anything could happen. Anybody could become anything.
The President General of Nigeria, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, had interest to establish a national library. The Ford Foundation now sent Dr. Carl White. They were also sponsoring the training of Nigerians. Someday we will be able to harmonize all this and see the various aspects Nigerians contributed to the greatness of this country.
At that time, the idea was to build human resource that will help propel the new nations that were emerging.
So it was a very government-focused approach and also a university approach. We supported educational institutions, particularly universities in Africa.
The University of Ibadan started in 1948. T. Adeoye Lambo was actually the vice chancellor when Ford Foundation came to the university. He said, perhaps the most iconic and transformative outcome of this partnership is the establishment of the Institute of African Studies.
With the support of the Ford Foundation, it was possible to get top resources and faculty to do quality research.
The strong foundation of the Institute of African Studies have enabled them, give birth to so many departments and even faculties, and the Institute of African Studies is still there.
The biggest grant Ford had made at the time was for the establishment of IITA.
You have to go back to the idea of the Green Revolution that helped solve the problem of hunger and malnutrition in India. Our vision is really to continue to sustain food security and nutrition security on the continent, but all of that to the goal of reduction of poverty. As of today, we have offices in 21 different countries across the continent.
That is a permanent feature of Ford Foundation, not only in Africa, but all tropical areas of the world.
Within a few years of independence, many African countries began to suffer reversals. In a country like Nigeria, we had our dark night in 1966. Nigeria had its first coup, and that coup set off a horrendous series of events culminating in a civil war. Things like this represented a crack in our foundation.
The Ford Foundation's support after the war was in rebuilding the country, rebuilding the institutions.
An important institution like the University of Nigeria, so that students whose education had been interrupted by 3 years of war could immediately go back to school. You find the imprint of Ford Foundation there in a critical place in Nigeria's history with the delicate task of trying to reconcile and heal. The 80s saw this collapse in public infrastructure and a corresponding rise in significant human rights abuses.
Nous avons eu deux représentants, Franklin Thomas et Susan Beresford.
And when Franklin Thomas became president, he discontinued a lot of the work focused on governments and pivoted to building civil society and nonprofit organizations.
And so you had an organization like Ford Foundation investing in rural development, investing in communal organizations.
La Fondation a un peu contribué donc à le leader dans le domaine de la recherche et de l'organisation dans les communautés rurales.
Ford Foundation has made a lot of tremendous contribution in encouraging women to move forward, giving them scholarships so that they could go and develop their knowledge in women's studies.
It's very important to have our memories preserved in archives. If you do not know where you're coming from, you would not know how to get to where you're going.
This archive was founded as a sound archive by J.H. Kwabena Nketia. The aim was to support research and creative engagement. It's about preserving, I call it, the knowledge of our ancestors, and then making this knowledge accessible to current and future generations. Ford Foundation's contribution to this has enabled us to connect our own history to the rest of the world and then in Africa.
By the 90s, the chickens had come home to roost. Nigeria was characterized by the struggle for democracy, the fight against the military.
So the idea was, how do you support these countries to return to democracy?
So we wanted a situation where we could call out corruption. It attracted both good and, I suppose, bad attention, because obviously the military government at the time was extremely sensitive to any kind of attempt to question the government.
Military rule had also weakened the ethical institutions in place then. People did not trust the government, did not trust the system.
All of this time, from 1995 to this point, we could not get integrity registered. Our objectives clashed with the government at the time. One of the things that we found commendable is that the Ford Foundation recognized the work we were doing and decided to give us a grant nevertheless. The grant was actually written in my name.
Most of the people that were trained and educated by Ford Foundation came back, and they play very significant role in government, in politics.
So one of our fellows, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, which is Kofi Annan, and there are many people like that, people who have ended up becoming captains of industry, luminaries.
I was the first African from Africa to be on the board of trustees.
I think the foundation was very lucky to have General Obasanjo as a trustee. And then he was put in jail. And for the period he was jailed, we sent him the Ford Foundation trustee books for every board meeting. We wanted people to know we haven't forgotten him because he's in jail.
They were also very active in campaigning for my release from prison. They didn't tell me that they have been paying my honorarium. They just said, well, check up in your bank. And I found that I have a quantum of money that helped me in rehabilitating my children who are out of school while I was in prison.
The 2000s is a roller coaster ride. It was like taking the cover off a pressure cooker. There was a lot of dialogue and conversations that had been suppressed through the military years that had to happen.
It was a beautiful time. It meant that the country had to start rebuilding democratic institutions as well.
We had to overhaul our administration of justice system, from remuneration to discipline to appointment of judges, to make cases simply go faster. And Ford was a very active supporter of the work that we were doing at the time.
Focusing on those things that really transform society. That's really at the heart of the work that the Ford Foundation does. If you look at, for instance, the work on the reproductive health.
There was no way Nigeria would have responded to the HIV and AIDS crisis if it did not respond to the issues of adolescent and young people's sexuality. So the question was, how do we reach young people?
The decision from the beginning would be that there will be this curriculum that will be integrated into like subject matter. Ford was there when we had to begin the implementation, coming from a place of silence to a place of policy action, and implementation was the greatest success.
We had a model of engaging grassroots communities, artisan groups, and the various cultural associations that are outside mainstream communication channels. We had the first HIV/AIDS education at an open shed, the mechanic workshop, and Ford wanted to support us to scale this model, to replicate it elsewhere.
The 2010s are obviously characterized by a rise in technology. This has provided lots of opportunities for young Nigerians. It's given them the platforms and the capacity to make their voices heard. And this has had a revolutionary impact on culture and on development in Nigeria.
Youth Opportunity Work definitely had a clear strategy around youth leadership development, to position young people to take leading roles in civil society and in politics.
I remember we had this mantra, when we speak, the government would shake, because I felt that as a young person, I had the power to get the government to do what we wanted.
INEC did not have a logistic management framework. Ford Foundation was happy to come on board, and we all partnered, worked with INEC, and we worked with every relevant stakeholder you might think of within the election delivery.
Ford knew that we were in a position to mobilize the grassroots communities across the length and breadth of this country. Through the works supported by Ford, we created the Reclaim Nigeria platform, real-time incident reporting, and to troubleshoot these incidents while elections were still going on. The election culture transformed completely. It became very inclusive.
In Ghana, for example, heavy lifting that was required at the beginning was supported by Ford, bringing the Electoral Commission and media together to better understand the electoral processes and report on them accurately. The elections came to pass. There was a change in government. The transition was peaceful.
West Africa is an extremely rich space in terms of cultural expression and art. Exploring our creativity and our cultural expressions help us to tap into those roots.
There's no doubt that creativity and free expression are critical and essential to West Africa's future.
The global media space had always had this narrative about Africa. Everything negative was applied to Africa. One of the best ways to tackle this is to empower Africans to be the one controlling the African narrative.
As a person, I believe in art that has impact. Because most times you often hear about negative stories about Nigeria. How about us doing a beautiful story about how Ebola was tamed in Nigeria? Ford Foundation trusted us. They gave us a grant towards the movie called 93 Days. Today we have over 9 musicals and we have 7 movies to our credit.
Life in my city means look around you, you're an artist, interrogate what you see. We are positioning art for social development. Ford Foundation came. What we did was to create opportunity for them, a platform for them to show their skills. The word is empowerment. Some of our people have now become well-known worldwide, working from Nigeria.
We had an amazing opportunity to invest in conserving the written heritage of Africa by focusing on work in Mali to preserve the African manuscripts. You know, Timbuktu was attacked. And we were like, oh my God, what's going to happen to the libraries? They hid all the manuscripts under the sand. They were very proactive. Our big question was, how are you going to move so many manuscripts out of Timbuktu? And they said, don't worry, we're going to float them down the river. And that's how they evacuated them and keep them out of harm's way.
Goé porte évidemment les stigmates, non seulement de la traite négrière, mais également les stigmates de la colonisation. On ne peut venir à Gorée et, après avoir visité la maison des esclaves, on ne peut en sortir que bouleversé. La seule réparation qui vaille, c'est la préservation de la mémoire. Après la reconnaissance par les autres et les autres du rôle joué pendant cette période.
C'est de réussir à faire de cet espace un espace de paix, de dialogue, mais surtout de réconciliation entre les peuples. Quelque part bouleversé parce que c'est une histoire pas uniquement des Africains, mais c'est l'histoire du monde.
La Fondation Ford qui nous a appuyés une première fois, qui nous a permis non seulement de stabiliser la maison des esclaves qui était dans un état.
Et justement d'instaurer une digue de protection pour un peu contrer l'avancée de la mer.
Afin que les uns et les autres aillent ensemble vers le pardon et la réconciliation des peuples.
I think another legacy of the foundation is the structure that we are in.
This office is one of the very few offices owned by the foundation across the world. The plan is for us to have a convening space similar to what we have in New York, which is a social justice center for our partners to come and have conversation, to have convening.
It's an office space, but it's also a monument to civil society and the fight for the human dignity.
It will be African-led philanthropy who advances achievement and social progress in the region long term. And so we're investing in collectives and collaborations among African philanthropists. BUILD is an initiative that aims to strengthen organizations to be durable, sustainable, and resilient.
The BUILD grant is important in particular because we needed to give support to institutions to support their core function and to strengthen organizations.
Intersectionality is looking at the issue of social justice beyond the single thematic issue. So you talk about the disability, you talk about the gender issue, the climate justice, the natural resources management. Intersectionality enables to really address all those in once, even across the government. It's really about how working across the issue in the sustainable and comprehensive way.
They have to partner with state governments, they have to partner with local government, and of course, also federal governments.
It is very important that both the private and government organizations, they need to continue to do collaborations. Some of our paramedics, apart from the basic training that they had, they never had opportunity of going for advanced training on rescue operations. This training took place because Ford Foundation facilitated it. We now noticed 37% increase in the number of people that were rescued alive.
The Ford Foundation has 9 areas of work, and in West Africa, we're focusing on 2 of those areas. And for us, it is looking at natural resource and climate justice and ending gender-based violence under our gender, racial, and ethnic justice program.
Ford has taken a decision to deal with preventing gender-based violence rather than wait for violence to occur.
We have numerous issues in our society. We have cultural dimensions, we have customs and practices that violate the dignity of women and girls. We have widowhood rights and rituals that are harmful, denial of rights of female children, for example, denial of inheritance by wives, and so on and so forth.
With Ford Foundation in the Southeast, we've been able to engage with all the important stakeholders, including government, including at a rural level, including community-based organizations, to ensure that we prevent gender-based violence, to ensure that we advance gender equality, that we end all forms of discrimination.
Our plan was to build women's agency, enable them to negotiate the power dynamics of their space, and now push for what they want.
We've had important decisions coming from some of these traditional rulers, changing their bylaws that are protective of women now, and even including women in their cabinet, which we didn't have before.
Now,
it is important for a woman to be one of them. So this one is not a women gotta solve your own, men gotta solve your own. Everybody will join hands together and make sure they settle the matter.
Because people even becoming chiefs in this part of the world is not easy. Today I can say I'm a chief, and we have many women's chiefs today, and we have also these women chiefs sitting in cabinet.
We work as a very unique piece working with Muslim opinion leaders.
People are kidnapped, especially the most vulnerable, and be used as an avenue of extortion by the bandits. It is unmeasurable impact to our society.
Even a woman that was already married with children and kidnapped, when they got there, they got them married to the bandits and even bear children. When they are rescued home, being reintegrated into their families, they do face some victimization among their own relations.
We are still very focused on the issue of prevention of stigmatization, which according to UN Women is another form or a double form of gender-based violence. Ford Foundation support, we worked to develop a formative guide for all traditional and religious leaders to be able to be guided and have the basic principles of how to integrate survivors back into communities.
And the traditional rulers have been doing their very best, trying to avert the issue of stigmatization.
Men beat their wives mercilessly. Even if she goes home, the parents will ask her to go home and that is just be patient. That is how we also manage our lives like that.
For us to be able to deal with shifting norms, we cannot do it without these people who hold that influence. We work with religious leaders to try and change their approach and their mindset to violence.
All religious leaders exercise a lot of influence on the behavior of people in the society.
We were able through the years to open up the space and build bridges between advocates and leaders of culture and faith.
Prevention is better than cure in all this. It is better to prevent rape than to try to help a rape victim. It is better to prevent wife battering than to try to help a battered person. If we put hands together, if traditional rulers are involved, if religious leaders are involved, then there will be a new culture.
Victims and survivors are always scared to report because there is usually a backlash. We set out with a simple but bold idea to leverage technology to promote safe reporting and access to emergency response services. We came across the Ford Foundation, and they were the first major funder who invested in our vision.
I'm sure you can hear the passion in my voice. I'm so excited because I know that change can happen. I'm so excited that Ford's strategy is looking at prevention, make the space safe in the community, in the schools, in the churches, so that girls are protected.
West Africa has enormous natural resources, fossil fuels, minerals, and forests, and other resources.
And yet, we have people in abject poverty, not actually translating into socio-economic development of the people.
Within the African continent, our development is largely driven by the extraction and the use of our natural resources.
We have need for more renewable energy, and with this need for electric vehicles, there's been the need for the extraction of more minerals.
In Nigeria, we're an oil-producing country, and that history of extraction has resulted in so many injustices, not just to the environment, but to the people in that environment.
A lot of our forest reserves now have become the subject for mining. And we have even seen some systematic changes in our regulations that is even opening up our forests more and more for mining activities.
Nous sommes dans un contexte au Sénégal où l'exploitation des ressources naturelles prend de plus en plus une expansion et a des impacts particuliers aussi bien sur l'économie, sur la vie des communautés, sur leur culture, sur leurs droits surtout.
Nous n'avons plus de terres habitables ni de terres cultivables. Tout est pris par les industries polluantes qui se trouvent là où nous sommes.
The focus of the foundation have really been to support communities, but also to ensure that the transition process is just.
Il est important de souligner que la question des changements climatiques est non seulement une question environnementale, encore plus une question politique, mais c'est une question géopolitique parce qu'elle interroge la trajectoire des nations.
Young people tend to, one, suffer. They don't benefit from even the resources that come from this extraction. And number two, they even get displaced, in terms of the way they live and even their source of livelihood. The support from Ford Foundation has given a lot of encouragement to young people to continue engaging, for them to understand the issues clearly, and more importantly, to co-create the kind of future that we are all aspiring for.
Climate action isn't only just about cost and burdens, but there are also opportunities as well. And how do you ensure that these communities are not left behind in the new value chains that are being developed as a result of our national and global response to climate?
So what we set out to do through Ford Foundation was to mobilize communities, help them to appreciate the need and their rights for when mining is happening, what they can do, what they cannot do.
We contributed quite significantly to the development of national policy on solid minerals. We engaged the stakeholders, we engaged communities. We had opportunity to engage companies on their corporate social responsibility actions.
So those are the kinds of things that the foundation have been working on to ensure that those of us who are alive today don't just consume everything today, but we manage it in a more responsible way.
In 65 years, Ford Foundation has ridden that roller coaster intentionally and gingerly in a restive but promising region, a region with deep potential.
The sort of partnership with Ford Foundation has done is to strengthen Nigeria's democratic institutions. We should be giving ourselves a pat on the back, as well as giving Ford Foundation a pat on the back because of the collaborative efforts that have brought us to where we are today.
You don't manufacture the identity of a community or of a people from outside. Ford comes and says, I have resources to support your initiative, serve you, serve your people, serve the African continent in the ways you want it to serve the African continent.
It's important that a donor does not come in with an agenda, and I think that's one of the most important things about the Ford Foundation and the grants that they give. There's that ability to remain focused and to follow through, to be there when you're starting, to be there when you're ending.
It has been our joy, our pride, our great honor to work and serve the people of West Africa.
We're excited that we have 65 years of work. I think it's also a time for sober reflections that the things that we want to address, the changes we want to see, are not anywhere near the horizon.
West Africa is among the regions that are in deep recession when it comes to democratic governance.
And so now we need more champions of freedom, champions of democracy and human rights. And Ford has to be a major partner in that fight.
I think Ford recognizes that ultimately it's the human being that is at the center of it. The human being is the justification, the reason why we do everything we do.